And then a couple weeks ago, I get a message at my office, and they're like, they gave me this message, and I'm like, it was a voicemail, and it didn't say who it was or whatever. It was just like, oh, call me back. But it was like a very confident sounding voice, you know. I say to my assistant, like, I don't have time to deal. Can you do me a favor and call this person back? So she goes, yeah. She's like, okay. He says to tell you that it's BH. And from episode whatever, maybe 20 or something, I don't know, of the podcast. And he comes in peace. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Every Day's a Train Wreck. I'm your host, Marley Major, and I am very excited once again this week to bring to you two very cool people, Victor Cass and Alyse, the historian. That's all we're going to say about her. And they have an amazing podcast called The Little Old Murder in Pasadena. And as you guys know, I'm from Pasadena, California, and it is one very unique place. I mean, I feel like I know where all the bodies are buried around here. Pasadena's not even that big yet. Well, somebody near and dear to me calls it like the little Chicago of Pasadena or something like that, because there is just literally so much that goes on. So I stumbled upon Victor and historian Alyse's podcast, and it was really cool because it was all these different stories and murders and unsolved things, and some of them solved in Pasadena. And they went way back, and I just got this whole like historical perspective, and I just loved it. So I decided I'm going to have them on my show, and I'm going to also talk to them about maybe some stuff that they wish they could continue to cover. Maybe it's not even in Pasadena. So as usual, it'll be fun. So Victor and Alyse, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Marley. Thanks for having us.
So Victor, give us a little bit of a background, because I know your background. So Victor, give us a little bit about your background, how you know Nils, how you decided to come upon the podcast, and then historian Alyse's whole role in this whole thing, because she does a really good job, I got to say.
For those who don't know, I'm a retired police sergeant. I did over 30 years, all with the Pasadena, California Police Department. Got a lot of deep ties to the community, both politically, socially, civically. And I've known the historian Alyse for many years, many of those years. We go back a long way. We're from the same neighborhood. And while I'm also a writer and historian and researcher, Alyse on her own was already running a historical podcast. I can let her kind of talk about that.
Oh, cool.
And that kind of segued into our podcast, The Little Old Murder from Pasadena. Why don't you tell them about your original podcast and how you got into this?
Yeah, so it was just after COVID, and I was kind of driving myself crazy trying to get a job. So I'm like, I might as well, find some way to relax myself. And so I wanted to listen to a historical true crime podcast while I was painting, but I couldn't find one. So I started Old Blood, which is all historical, really old murders. And so that's what I got started. There was about 5 seasons of that. And then we got The Little Old Murder from Pasadena started, which I just love, like the image, the little lady from Pasadena in the car, because Pasadena actually is a very murdery place.
People don't believe this. I'm like, you people see it like on the Rose Parade and think this is the most wholesome place in town, which it definitely appears that way. I mean, they're definitely, the Labrador matching bow in front of the white picket fence with the Christmas card, but there's freaking a lot that goes on here. Alyse, were you true crime girl? I mean, we understand Victor, right? That's his career, but like, what's your deal? Like, were you just, because I'm a true crime junkie. Like, I wish I were not obsessed with the mob and cocaine wars and all that kind of stuff. I'm not an active cocaine user, nor an inactive cocaine user, actually, now that I think about it. Are you just fascinated? Did you
I've always just been a very morbid little girl. Like, I remember right when the internet was kind of a thing and I was a kid, I would stay up really late Googling the Lizzie Borden crime scene photos and looking at all of those. So I'm just morbid and also really into history, and so those two just kind of combined.
And that's what I thought is really great about yours is, and this is totally going to show my age, because I remember my mom talking in the past about like, oh, she's such a history buff and all this stuff, and I was like, oh my God, that is so dumb. Like, who would ever be interested in history, right? And now that I'm older, history is such a way that it, knits everything together, and it's like you have just constant aha moments. So it's always like, oh my gosh, that makes perfect sense.
Mhm.
Now, Victor, going like with you, I kind of get it, right? Because that's your background. But then the part that I don't sort of get is, wouldn't you want to leave all that aside, or why start a podcast?
So that's a great question. And I remember that, the day I retired, the day I walked out of the Pasadena police station, I thought, I'm never going to go back. I'm never looking back. I'm never going to do anything ever again in my life that has to do with, security or investigations. I wasn't going to get like a second job, working for a bank and, doing all the stuff I did when I was a financial crimes detective. But, I too am interested in history, and I'm a huge Pasadena buff. We're both Pasadenans. Like I said, we both came from the same neighborhood. And when I realized this was an opportunity to not only talk about true crime, and a lot of the cases that we go over, I had some tangential part to it because they're from my career.
Mhm.
And, one of them, I was even one of the two homicide detectives. But at the same time, because they focus on Pasadena murder cases, we are able to dive into so many things about Pasadena, the arts, the culture, the
Yeah.
history. We're in all of our episodes, we're always throwing something historical or artistic or cultural in, whether it's the Castle Green or
Yep.
Old Town or Bungalow Heaven. There's something that we're going over that I think people that are also fans of Pasadena and LA County history will find something interesting as well in that regard. But to touch back to what you said about Pasadena and the way people think about it, I mean, I think you're right. The majority of people around the country, they see Pasadena as the Rose Parade and the
Mhm.
game and Old Town, and they really don't realize that we are a big, diverse city with lots of different neighborhoods. We have one large area that's traditionally kind of our lower socioeconomic high crime area. We have gangs in Pasadena. In my first year as a cop in 1993, that first year we had 28 murders in Pasadena, 4 in one night in a mass shooting. So there's a lot of stuff that happens in Pasadena. It's not as they say, it's not your grandma's Pasadena. It probably never was. There really
Right.
was never any good old days here in the city, as our podcast has shown our listeners through 3 seasons. Alyse has done such a good job, I think, researching and delving into the old historical cases. So
Yeah.
she did the cases like pre 1950, like all the way down to the 1800s.
Mhm.
I kind of focused on the cases that were after 1950 till today.
I mean, in the old days, because this is how old I am, you wanted to do a research anything, and you go to the library and you like look up the card catalog. Okay, then these days everything is on the internet, or is it? Because I swear, I don't think I'm making this up. That I heard like you were digging through some kind of like physical files somewhere. Did I
Yeah.
make that up, or is that the case?
No, no, you are correct. I think, like, probably half of the cases that I did on the podcast, I like, just Googling it, you wouldn't be able to find anything. So that's
Yes.
the thing. You have to go,
Good.
like, into the newspaper, like, know which newspapers to look at and,
So as an example, I mean, we were both on ancestry.com,
yes.
newspapers.com. She collects library cards and is
Oh,
always at a library checking out some arcane book that covers some aspect of one of the cases she's researching.
I
So
didn't even think of that, because at the end of the day, I mean, I kind of started as I was listening to your guys' different podcasts, and then trying to follow the thread, like to get, let's say, a little bit more about this one or that, particular ones that interested me. Then it's like it would literally go cold. And now, I mean, I hadn't really thought too much about it, because these days we just think like, oh, everything is on the internet, but not really. Like if there's a newspaper article from, 1910, it
Yeah.
isn't, correct me if I'm wrong, on the internet, unless somebody is putting it, like scanning it, putting it on the internet, and then talking about it, or for some reason, then it gets talked about so much that,
Mhm.
it kind of then becomes part of the internet. But it isn't like poof, the internet started, and everything from all the way back. No, it's like literally you're touching physical files, and or as you say, like going on ancestry.com, digging through what otherwise would be the physical files, right?
Right. Yeah, you can't just Google and then have all the information on the internet show up, like, right in front of you. You have to know very specific places to
It
look
it
for it.
and also there's a lot of, like, kind of stitching together, so, like,
Mhm.
Elise and I both have huge libraries on Pasadena history books. They also have books
Yes.
on the Pasadena Police Department and Los
Oh,
Angeles
cool.
County and San Gabriel Valley history books. So there's a lot of, like, piecing together pieces of information, and we're lucky because, like, some of the cases that we reviewed, I actually have the police case file
Which
both
is
on 'em,
so great. I
you
mean,
know?
that is what makes
Yeah,
it amazing, knowing that you're not just some random guy just going,
exactly.
"Oh, yeah, this is what happened." But I mean, it's like, no, you know what
Yes.
the danger lurks in Pasadena,
Mhm.
et cetera, and you know some of this backstory. Now, by the time you started the podcast, though, you were already out. You'd already left the police force, right?
That's correct. I retired in June of 2023. Mhm.
Okay. And then have you found yourself going back to those guys and being like, "Hey, can you look something up?" Like, I think that's like not allowed, but
That's a great question, and, there has been, some interactions with some of my old colleagues,
yeah.
regarding, this or that, document or, "Hey, can you check something for me?" And it's interesting you bring this up because in our podcast, there were a couple of instances where a case was so recent,
Mhm.
that, word kinda got out, and, like, I would get a call from one of the robbery homicide friends of mine, and they were
Mhm.
like, "Hey, Victor, we know that you want to do this episode, and next week we're doing this, search warrant, or it's going to court, and can you just hold off on it?" Well, they've asked me to be cool and like, can we not do that episode right now? And I hook them up and take care of them, and like, yeah, we'll shelf that one, and we won't do this or that. Um, but getting back to the whole like some of our sources, some we're lucky in that sometimes there's like a definitive book about the
Right.
murder, like with the Annandale murders from 1991. A lot of that, you could use Leon Bing's book Smoked, the story about the kids next door, and so
Wait, I don't even know that. How, like, this is what blows my mind every single time. Like, I'm a member of Annandale, right? Every single time I talk about something about passing, and somebody goes, "Oh, well, blah blah blah." Like it's like everybody, and it's like, no, I didn't know that one,
There's
right?
always some new crazy story.
yeah, and the thing with the Annandale murders is it was the first triple, like multiple murder that Pasadena had since like 1974.
Mhm.
And you think with all the gang stuff through the 80s, there had been no like multiple homicides, and this murder was with three like white girls from like South Pasadena, and it was just a crazy case that like shocked actually the whole community in America at the time in 1991.
Okay, so what's the like now? Do tell. I mean, hopefully this isn't one of the ones they ask you to back off of.
No, no, no. It's an old case. You want to talk a little bit about it?
Yeah, so it's I mean, Annandale, it's like one of the
Yeah,
nicest neighborhoods in Pasadena.
yeah.
And there were three teenage girls at home. They were partying, and they had three teenage boys over. Two of them decided to start shooting at the girls, so all three of them
They
were
were
killed.
shotgunned in the head,
Yeah.
and you know, one
Wait,
of the
like,
boys.
hi, we're playing beer pong, and now, oh,
So
whoops, we have the
I
shotgun
think
out, or
the motivation was one of the girls had, like, kneed one of the men in the balls and, like, threatened their masculinity, so it was like, "You threaten my masculinity, I have to shoot you all in the
I'll show
face."
you kind of thing,
oh wow,
and
with one's shotgun that happens to
yes,
be.
oh yeah, yeah. There was
Oh,
a shotgun in the main house. The boys came. They shot all. What One of the boys shot two of the girls. The other one shot the other one. And they had a friend there. They had a male friend that was there. They pointed the gun at him and said, "Are you down or are you dead?" Of course, he played along. I'm with you guys. Of course, he runs home. He lets his family know what happened, and then the Pasadena police gets called. And I wasn't a cop at the time, but yeah, Pasadena PD shows up to this little, two-story house in the Annandale section of Linda Vista, and they find three girls with their heads blown off, and it's all just
wait, what? Like, I just heard what you said, and I guess I mean, people should Google like Annandale, Pasadena to. I can't even. I mean, plus I live right up here, so
Yeah.
we're
yeah.
taping it, and did these girls know the guys very well?
In fact, one of the girls was dating one of the killers, and I remember back in 1999 when I wrote the history book for the police department. I actually interviewed one of the detectives that handled that murder case, Mike Corporal. He's since passed away, but I remember when we talked about the case. He talked about these two boys because they Pasadena PD had to go to Oregon because the boys had fled to Oregon, and we had to extradite them back down.
Yeah,
And what Detective Corporal, what he had told me was that, one of the boys was kind of the weaker link, you
yeah.
know, kind of the follower, and they knew how to like work on him in the interview room. But the other one, Adkins, was more of the, more if she hadn't done X to me, I wouldn't have done Y. Kind of one of those
Oh.
kind of characters, you know.
Well, yeah, they're okay. So, and was it their gun or was it no? The gun was already in the house, and they
It belonged to one of the girls' stepfathers in the main house.
I
Yeah,
shut.
think they were, like, shooting at bottles in the yard just before that, like, doing target practice.
yeah,
And then,
it
of
was
course, they were drinking.
yeah, the drinking,
Of
those drugs, of
course.
course,
Yeah.
Oh,
and
yeah. Okay. Well, then the next question that everybody asks, when you're from Pasadena, is what school did they go to? Those girls.
actually, these girls went to
South
South Pasadena
Pasadena.
High School.
Yeah.
One of the boys went to South 2 of the boys went to South Pasadena High School.
I think one
Um,
went to San Marino
yeah,
also.
one went to San Marino,
Wow.
and they just happened to be because the girl who was staying in the upstairs on top of the garage, so there's 2
Yeah.
separate properties on it's a Fairlawn address on Fairlawn Way.
Oh, wow.
Um, yeah, so they had moved to that home, like, a few years before. It was
Yeah.
her mom and her new husband, the stepdad to the girl that lived in that's why the girl was there in the upstairs, where she lived in that kinda upstairs house, and she had her friends over that night because her mom and stepdad were away on a trip to Chicago. But I just think, I'm a parent myself, my daughter just
Yeah.
turned 25, a couple of days ago. I just think to myself, this the horror, these poor parents coming back
Yeah.
and having to like learn via phone from the detectives, that they're not all home yet, that this tragic thing happened to their daughters.
I am just like blown away. And so, had these boys been in trouble before,
So
or
the two suspects did have a crime history, as far as like two like funky white dudes from South Pasadena and wherever it could. I mean, they had they had both been on probation for like think breaking and entering. They had some petty
Yeah.
crime stuff background. They're just kind of
yeah?
like knuckleheads, but they all got sentenced. Those two boys got sentenced to life.
They're still
Um,
there.
they're still there in prison. In fact, just like a couple years ago, denied the parole for both of them. So
Wow.
yeah, they're in their
I
50s. Mhm.
wow, they're in their 50. Where are they in jail?
I can't remember the name of the prison. Yeah,
Oh.
I can't remember.
Well, that goes to my next thing of how like people go to prison and then all of a sudden they start getting all the fan letters from the chicks and they get married, and I mean that's its own. What is that about?
Well, I mean, look at Manson and all the fans that he had. There was just some people who, they're fascinated also kind of like we are by true
Yeah,
crime,
yeah.
and maybe they are missing something in their own life. And there's like the lure and like shock value of it all. That's what I think. What do you think?
Yeah. I don't know. I've often wondered about that too. What is with all these girls getting so obsessed over murderers? And I don't get it.
I don't I don't get it in any way, shape, or form. If it's like that whole like fix it thing where I can make them better. They shouldn't have. Yeah, blah, blah. I
Yeah,
mean,
I don't know if they wanna fix these guys. I mean, when you're sitting in, on death row or in prison for life like Manson was, I think it's more of like I'm sure these ladies that write to these people in prison and they try to date them or, go for conjugal visits, there's something off about the women to begin with. Like,
very clear.
they're like black sheep in their family. They're kind of outcasts themselves. They may have mental health issues also. They may be who knows what strata of society they may be from, but they're not like your normal, mainstream people, for this one, from what I've seen in my experience. There's always something a little bit kind of like alternative about
Yeah,
them.
right. That would be kind of their target audience of pen pals is hi,
Mhm.
you're incarcerated for murder.
Yeah.
And
And I think it's sexy and like, ooh,
yeah.
how edgy, and let me,
Oh, right.
live
That
on
is
the edge and let me
edgy. It sure is on the edge. That
uh,
Or like
is
they want in on the infamy.
they
I don't
wanna get
know.
on the infamy,
mm.
maybe to their little weird group of friends that like boosts their status or, it's weird. It's weird stuff.
Now, we have talked, Nils and I, and do you know Joe Cornett, our other friend,
No.
who's like the movie producer friend of Nils? Well, we've done a bunch of podcasts but about his movie stuff, like totally different, right? And we got on this true crime story of Pasadena, with maybe I can say it, but well, I don't know. The You and Nils have probably talked about it, where Nils like arrested the guy who tried to kill a restaurateur's wife and kids. Does that ring a bell?
I do recall him mentioning about something like that. I'm not
Does the name Brian, I won't say the last name, mean anything to you?
I couldn't pull up that specific case.
Yeah.
Elise and I have dealt with so many cases in the last like year
Yeah.
that sometimes they start kind of
Yeah. Well,
what
this guy, so we were talking about it ages ago. I mean, it literally was ages ago. Okay. And as far as I knew, this guy, we were talking about him on the podcast as BH, right? And so we talk about BH, and because it was this big thing, Nils arrested him. He like according to Nils, put the hit out, from with the Mexican mafia in prison and it was just a freaking hot mess. Okay, so I guess the police brought Nils in, and he got arrested for all kinds of things. So we're taping this thing like a year ago, at least, and then a couple weeks ago, I get a message at my office, and they're like, they gave me this message, and I'm like, it was a voicemail, and it didn't say who it was or whatever. It was just like, oh, call me back. But it was like a very confident sounding voice. I say to my assistant, like, I don't have time to deal. Can you do me a favor and call this person back? So she goes, yeah. She's like, okay. He says to tell you that it's BH. And from episode whatever, maybe 20 or something, I don't know, of the podcast. And he comes in peace. And I
Huh.
was like, and I was like that. So I'm thinking the guy is still in jail, right? I have no idea. So I am like, oh my God. So I say to Nils, I'm like, you are never going to believe this, because it now is coming back to me, because now I'm like, what? God, what were we talking about, right? So Nils is
Yeah.
like, yeah, call him back. Why not? So I call the guy back, and oh my goodness gracious, are we not pen pals now? I mean, this guy is, and he'll send me all the, like, he's like, oh, I got my law degree, and I got my this, and I got my
And
that, and all
he's
this.
still in prison.
He is out now, living in Irvine.
Oh wow.
Nils said that the state paid for him to go get his legal license. I don't know. This BH tells me, no, the state didn't pay, whatever. Meanwhile, he is like, but I'm talking to him because I was saying, hey, listen. He's like, don't you want the truth? And I was like, if you want to give me the truth, hot stuff, and be on this podcast, no problem, right? And
Yeah.
Nils
Yeah.
kept saying there's no way he's going to show up and do it. And I'm like, no, I think he's going to. He's like, Marley, like, get a lot. Like, he'll get very close to it, but he's not going to actually do it, right? Well, anyway, yours truly keeps talking to this guy. And he was in Pasadena doing all kinds of things for many, many, many. He was like a mortgage broker, and he was a lender and all this stuff. So that's why he got hot and heavy with all kinds of different people. And he'll just text me like, "Oh, here's a photo of my dog, and and he kind of keeps teasing like he wants to be on the podcast, and he wants me to do a FOIA request, right? And Nils is like, "You can't do a FOIA request, like, dingbat, on like certain court documents. Like, you don't just say, oh, give me everything you've got, on this person." And so I said, why don't you send me some documents? Well, the documents would be, as I say, like the photo of the dog, like with the hose or something. And then I'll say, oh, this is supposedly his girlfriend. Nils is like, yeah, he has texted me that photo like 2 years ago. And that is, I don't know, whatever it is. But the crazy thing is, then I'll be talking to him, and then I'll say something, and then I realize, like, this guy was in prison for more than 10 years, right? So there are these gaps, like, with
Mhm.
how stuff goes, that you forget. Yeah, because he was gone. Like, he was, like, not in the world with all of us, when, like, restaurants are opening or closing. I mean, all dumb stuff. You get it? But
Sure.
I
Yeah.
can I can only I can only imagine. And anyway, so I was just very excited telling this to Nils, and then we were at Portavia in Pasadena, and where we kind of chew the fat and reload for lunch every once in a while. And those guys are like, this guy is dangerous. You do not need to be going to, Irvine. And I said, oh, he says I should just go to Irvine to, like, do the pun. They're like, yes, because he's not allowed in Pasadena. He has a restraining order against. And I was like, oh, whoops, little
No.
restraining order. There you go. I'll just trot down there and pretend I'm Leslie Stahl. So, but I certainly am not in love with the guy. But I will tell you, it's weird when you do talk to them, and there is some, like, I don't know. Like, Alyse, maybe you can help me with it, because maybe is it why we just are fascinated with it, or is it that you're talking to them and you're like, oh, he seems like a nice guy, he couldn't do this? But I mean, somebody doesn't go to prison for 10 years plus if they haven't done anything.
I've often wondered at my curiosity for things, and I don't know.
well, just look how many women like just picked the wrong guy to date. I mean,
Yeah.
Well,
there's that too.
100%. I guess supposedly on the podcast they said that he had a twitch and kind of chewed on his cigars, and he wasn't very happy with that. And I totally forgot about that until he said it, and then I was like, oh, that's right. I do remember him kind of always having kind of a
Yeah.
slanted weird. There always seems like there's something in the eyes, or I don't know, but. Anyway, so we'll see story developing, and in the meantime, you and Nils can brush up on that one, right? And then I can have you back, and you're going to be like, "Oh my god, yes, I remember that."
Yeah.
Now,
They're
are there
always meet in a well-lighted place. There's a lot
right? Exactly, yeah. And Nils is like, "The hell you are going down to Irvine by yourself? Like, are you crazy?" And I was like, "Well," but anyway, that's why I have a show called Every Day's a Train Wreck. So, are there any of these? Anything going on even in the news right now? I don't know if you guys have seen that one on Netflix. I'm kind of fascinated by it. It's this guy that said he had amnesia. If you haven't seen it, you've got to see it. It's called like The True Story of Benjamin Kane, or I don't know, something like that. But I remember his initials were BK because they supposedly found him beaten up in the dumpster at Burger King.
Mhm.
And he said he had amnesia. So I stumble upon this thing, and I'm trying to figure out, like everybody else is, like, how is he have amnesia? There's all these news shows about him. Nobody comes forward and says they know him. And they're like, how is this even freaking possible? And the guy claims he doesn't remember anything. Well, it turns out, the long story short, is that he was, I guess, doing it so that the mob or whatever he was involved with back in Chicago, or I don't know, I think it was somewhere in the Midwest, would he was basically like publicly saying, I don't know who I am, so I'm not gonna out anything about you guys.
Own version of amnesic witness
Ex-
protection program, kind of like I'm not a danger anymore. I don't know anything.
But he was the most public non-danger until finally somebody a million years later came out with it, and that this whole thing like flipped. And I'm just going, that is kind of genius, right? To just keep making these public statements, I guess, to everybody who's after you and looking for you for the hit, that nope, no clue where I'm from. And he kept saying he's from Colorado. Well, it turns out like his thing from Colorado is he was running with his friend against the law. And I was just like, these people, how in the God's name do they have this kind of time and still like are able to have friends or have a job or like support themselves? Or maybe they just don't.
Yeah, I mean, this guy's putting himself out there. There's always, of course, the danger that some really hardcore stone killer mafia person's going to be like, I don't care, kill him.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that danger.
Well,
Too,
they
so
might now. So
yeah.
do you find yourselves, are you sort of over with the investigations and stuff with the podcast? Are you kind of like, oh, we're on to something new that was fun sort of after COVID? Or
Well, I
We're
mean,
kind of on the same track.
but like we've thought about starting, a kind of segueing into a
yeah.
new podcast,
Mhm.
kind of a YouTube kind of video podcast where we talk about, more of like Pasadena, again,
Like
culture,
talking
history,
current events
current
kind of
events,
thing.
but paying reference or to some of the cases and tying in some kind of true crime elements.
So you're
Like,
not going to just say like, oh, there's a farmer's market on
no, not
Saturday.
necessarily like
No.
that. It'll be more like, you
Like
know,
discussing the 710 stub and their plans.
yeah, like
Oh,
talk
yes.
about some
Their
historical
wild
stuff and
plans.
like how it pertains to today and our views on it then and now and
Yeah.
things like that. And maybe having guests and stuff too, kind of like, the way you'd have a guest on
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
on your
Yeah.
podcast. Yeah.
So we're planning that. And we're also working on a project where we're taking all 3 seasons of the podcast and we're turning it into a book. So
Oh,
we've been writing those chapters.
Yeah, true crime book of the same name. That's just basically, the three
very
seasons chapter.
cool.
If people want to find out about the history
Yeah.
of murder in Pasadena, just pick up this book and
And
Yeah,
then,
so he'll be writing the chapters, the more modern ones that he had something to do with, and I'll be writing the older ones.
yeah. Mhm.
and there was one that I was just totally fascinated with. And, you grow up here and you think like, everything about a place. But something fascinated me, which was the woman and then the Chinese chef, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And you said something that really caught my attention because you were like, way. And when was that? That was from like the 1920s, maybe. I don't know. I mean, I don't. It wasn't. I don't think it
Yeah,
was.
I don't remember the year exactly, but I remember which case you're talking about. I think it was
Mhm.
like 1900 something maybe?
Yeah, yeah, like it was a long time ago, and then you said, "Oh, yeah," because it was, like, very coveted to have, like, Chinese food was not
Mm,
everywhere like it
Absolutely.
is
right.
now, and this whole thing and I was like, "God, that is a really cool culture reference," like and that talk about
Mhm.
going to something that totally plays with Pasadena, right, is like
Yeah.
anything that is, "Oh, like, look at how special we are,"
Well,
and bougie that we have this Chinese chef.
I remember reading articles where, the lady of the house would boast about, like, "You can come to my house," and she would serve, special meals for lunch to impress her guests, the Chinese meals that her chef was able
Yeah, and
to
anybody
whip
who's
up
ever
for
had,
them.
like, home-cooked Chinese food,
Oh, yeah.
it's better than the restaurants. I mean, it's the best thing you've ever had in your life, you know?
100%.
Yeah.
And I still don't know anybody to this day who has like a Chinese chef. Like, I
Mm.
mean, that's kind of amazing. Like even
Yeah.
on the West Side, I can't even think of somebody who's like, oh yeah, their chef at home is like Chinese and making authentic Chinese cuisine. You know what I mean? I mean, it's
Right.
pretty cool.
Yeah.
Did you have any cases that you thought? Well, let me ask you. Did you have any cases that you thought were gonna go one way and then went another way?
Mm.
I think so. I think,
Mhm.
kind of, along that same line, there
Yeah.
were several cases that Alyse researched where a lot of the same people kept popping up in different
Mhm.
cases related, like, in the same
Really?
time period, you know?
Like what like how?
The one that came into my mind is, and they say it's like Pasadena's most famous unsolved crime, which is the Sphinx murder, because it happened at the Scottish Rite Cathedral, and they have two Sphinx that like flank the entrance there. A
And where is that?
It's on,
It's on
North
Madison.
Madison Avenue. So you could actually go today to
Mhm.
the area of Madison and Union, and all the buildings and structures that were involved in this case from the 1930s are still there. You know,
Really?
like,
Is that kind of by where like the Pasadena Mall is or something?
no. So you know where, 65 North Madison, that medical building that's right there, and there's a Toy
Yes.
Story on the ground floor.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's where the murder victim worked in that building. He
Mhm.
was a dentist, and if you just go
Oh.
right up the street, you'll see the Scottish Rite Temple. I'm a Mason, and so that's a Masonic temple
Oh,
with
okay.
sphinxes, and that he was shot in that parking lot there. So these structures are all still there. You can kind of walk, and if you go on my TikTok, we have videos where we actually kind of walk you with along.
Oh, that's very cool. What's your TikTok? Because I'll forget
Um,
to ask you later.
it's just at Victor Cast. Just go to my TikTok, and you'll see the videos that we like tie into some of the cases. And we had
Mhm.
a TikTok about that case. So you kind of walk you through what happened. But on
And so
that,
what is the deal? Like what happened with that one?
So he was Dr. Leonard Seaver, and in
Always with the
society,
doctors
I
again,
know,
by
he
the
was
way.
like a
God.
notorious ladies' man, but, like, the more I read and researched about him, I wondered if he was actually gay and not this big ladies' man, because there were other women writing about him, like, very surprised that he would have gotten a woman knocked up, which is another
Oh,
thing to say,
mhm.
yeah.
just one of the things where it's like, was he really this notorious ladies' man, or was that kind of like a beard that he gave himself
Yeah.
during the time? This was 1933.
But there was also an element of that case which I found interesting because, again, it was kind of rare at the
Yeah.
time for like the Pasadena Police Department to have an unsolved murder that's still
Yeah.
unsolved to this day.
Yeah.
And I remember Chief Kelly at the time, who was the chief in that time period, in the Pasadena PD. They really worked this case. They thought they might have a lead, but there was some kind of shady, like, underground things going on with this guy.
Mhm.
Elise and I were talking about this. That was possibly like involving an abortion ring or even like a sex, like a.
So here's the craziest thing is that
Yeah.
this murder happened in 1933.
Okay.
1948, I believe, George Judd was murdered, like, right by the Rose Bowl in his home,
And
and
what was his deal, George Judd's?
he was, I think he might have been gay too, because he was constantly getting, like, robbed in strange places by strange men.
Oh, I remember that one. You guys talked about that one on the podcast, right?
Whereas they have to say things, they can't straight out talk
Yeah.
about certain things back
Yeah.
then. So they were just using that kind of language, and the way that he was killed was very similar to Dr. Seaver, like, both of them had their watches stolen. both, it was very similar. And so when he was killed in 1948, they brought back up the Leonard Seaver murder,
Yeah.
talking about how, like, there was this probably this, like, secret, like, I don't know, like like this underworld of like a sex ring or like abortion, I don't
Wow.
know, this crazy underworld going on in Pasadena. And I remember they were saying, like, if the truth ever came out, Pasadena would just explode like a volcano.
Yeah, but that wasn't there was also this other doctor that worked in the building with Dr. Seaver, and
Yes.
he
He was
we
rumored to be
kinda
giving
thought yeah, we
abortions.
kinda thought he might have been involved in the murder of Dr. Seaver, but then he died
Mhm.
in a car accident, like, within a year of the
Oh, well,
Yeah.
that's a shocker.
yeah,
I
mhm,
know,
I
and that was
mean,
a crazy story too, because he was driving this Hollywood starlet, like, at the peak of her career. They were driving down from Altadena and crashed, and they both died,
yeah,
and that was, like, the main suspect in the Seaver murder.
yeah,
well, that
so
seems a little convenient to me,
yeah.
doesn't
Yeah.
it? Well, Nils, he's probably going to yell at me for saying this, but well, okay, whatever. Let's just say it wasn't Nils, it was somebody else. That there's this, like, did you guys see the mortician that was filmed in Pasadena?
We
We were
had
just
we
Right?
had
talking
an
about that
episode on our
yesterday.
podcast about that case too.
Oh,
Yeah.
you did? Oh, I got to
We
go back
did.
because I didn't hear that one. What's your take on that one?
I remember it when I was in, like, high school and college at the
Oh, you
time.
do? Like real time. You remember when it was happening?
And, the Pasadena historians, those of us with, like, huge libraries about Pasadena history
Yeah.
will know that that Lamb family was an old,
Mhm.
prominent Pasadena
Yeah.
family that went back 3 generations to, like,
Yeah.
kind of the business founders of the city,
Yeah.
and they were involved on school boards in
Mhm.
Pasadena.
They
I
have a
mean,
big, beautiful home in
yeah,
Orange
they were
Grove.
involved in so much stuff, and one of the takeaways when you watch that documentary, The Mortician, is that they kind of at first they kind of set it up where, you know, he he's doing all these heinous things. And we were talking how, I mean, they were basically doing everything the Nazis were doing. The next step would have been
Oh,
murder,
I didn't
like
even think of that.
murdering
Yeah.
people near death to get the things that they're trying to get, incinerators, stealing jewelry and clothes off the victims. I
Yeah.
mean, doing all kinds of shady stuff.
He was just always
It
escalating.
always escalating. But the thing
Yeah.
is, that was taught behavior. So people focused on him, but when you look at how they talk, and this is a learned behavior. So it really brings up, and we talked about this, how long had the Lamb Funeral
Yeah.
Home been doing that and had trained him to do that?
So when you say learned behavior,
Or
you're saying like I think this had been happening for probably tons of years and it just took so long for it to actually come up.
I think what happened was David Lamb got, or what was his last name? It was
It's not it's like something else. He's got
his
a
last name was the last name of his father, who married a lamb.
right.
His mom was a
Right.
Lord,
Right.
but
Right.
they David just took off with it. He was greedy, so
Mhm.
greedy that he just wanted more and more. So he took the scheme
Yeah.
and just blew it up by
Yeah.
10,000 times. So where
10x it.
he had to expand it. It had to grow. He had to do more with it. But the theory behind it, the philosophy behind it, the business model
Yeah.
behind it, I guarantee that was taught to him. So it really brings up the question: how long were
Yeah.
they doing this type of thing before he took it to the next level?
Well, and then ironically, I was at the Pasadena Elks Club last week because Nils was doing his book signing and all that there. And I love the whole Pasadena Elks thing because now everybody's joining it because like the Newport Elks and then the Hawaii Elks, are both on the water and they have the most gorgeous sights. But so many people are from Pasadena that are in Newport, right? So I guess they're doing their training or whatever it is up here so that they can then be down in, Newport in the summer with the free elk drink. So that place just fascinates me on its own. And so when I was in there, I mean, last week I was like, Lord have mercy. Is there a can of paint anywhere near this place? Right. And Nils was like, that's the guy that runs the crematorium that he was using, that he was like putting the bodies back and forth
Yeah, mhm.
from. And I was just like, "Oh my gosh, it's just freaking it never ends around
Yeah.
here." Well, so what somebody came brought up to my attention is at like a prominent hospital that you guys would know, which I'm not going to say anything about, that there was this like organ ring going
Mhm.
where like some like people who are not even dead yet, like I guess they're brain dead supposedly, but they're pulling the plug on them a little bit early so they can get the organs. And I'm just like, excuse me, like this is really a thing. I seem to be kind of one of the only ones who didn't know this was going on.
Look, I
So
mean, it's no secret that whenever there are opportunities to make millions of dollars, people will do all kinds of terrible things to other human beings, and it's just the way human nature is, you know.
I
So
mean, but can you elaborate a little bit on how that, like what in the world? So you just take the organs, and so it's like for people who need transplants and stuff, I
I mean,
guess?
you see like, thrillers and like sci-fi books and
Yeah.
movies made about this kind of stuff, horror films.
Yeah.
There's always going to be I'm sure this really happens all over the world. There's a laundry list of rich people, and this is what they need. And this rich guy's willing to pay top dollar for a new liver, a new this, a new that,
Yeah.
and a list of people who are candidates to be, unplugged and the organs transferred.
In one of these cases, it was like, um, it started to get weird because the physician would not sign off all of a sudden, and they're like, "Well, what do you mean the physician's not signing off?" And it was like, "'Cause he wasn't going to sign off that all this stuff was done properly, you
Mm,
know?"
yeah.
And I was just going, "Oh, here we go again. We're gonna have
Mhm.
another story breaking." Um, did you ever have anything to? Well, let me ask you guys a question. Why do you think all this freaking crazy stuff happens in Pasadena? Like you have Tom Girardi and you have Erica Jane and you have that whole like, crazy making Real Housewives of Beverly Hills situation. And then you have somebody just told me that Sir Han's family was from Pasadena. And then I was like, well, I read something about how the guy from Scientology, L. Ron Hubbard, was having the affair with Parsons or Jake, I don't know, Parsons with the connection with the whole JPL thing. I'm like, how does all this stuff happen in this little tiny place?
People have to remember that Pasadena is the oldest suburb in Los Angeles County. So the only city older than Pasadena is the city
Oh,
of Los Angeles. So Pasadena goes back to, its founding from like 1877, but it was incorporated in June of 1886, making it the second oldest city in the county. So when you have a city this old, that's this famous for being on the map, for being a place that
got it.
wealthy tourists from all over America can come during
Yeah.
the wintertime, you're going to have famous people, socialites,
Yeah.
people are looking to scam people out of money. You're going to
Yeah.
have, you know, all kinds of stuff happening. And there's, because we have Caltech
Yeah.
and, all these famous institutions, as the years and decades go on, Einstein stayed here. Like the parts of the
Oh,
Manhattan Project were probably done here at Caltech. I mean, so
oh,
many
that's
famous things
right.
happen at JPL. There's going to be opportunities for all kinds of people to get together of all different like moral codes and
It's kind of
financial
like an
need.
experimental city too, like, we have so
Yes.
many different types of churches, denominations,
Oh, I never even thought of that. You're right.
Yeah.
um
And like more like we have some of the like she said, some of the largest percentage of churches per capita in the US. We have more restaurants per capita than New York City. I mean, there's so
We
much
do.
going on. Yes, there's so much going on
Pasadena?
in
Yep.
Pasadena. Yeah. And one of those places that people love to move to, they love to be in. Homeless people love being homeless in Pasadena. I mean, when you get all this humanity into one place that's as diverse and rich as Chicago or New York City,
Yeah.
you're going to have bizarre murder cases. You're going to have gangs. You're going to have financial fraud. You're going to have, wonderful events like the Tournament of
Yeah.
Roses, the Rose. We just do so much here in this city. It's such a famous destination.
Let me ask you about the fires. Do you think that like do you believe any of the conspiracy theories about the fires, that they were intentional or anything like that, or do you think it was just like a whole hot
Look,
mess?
we all know that. I mean, we were both here. We had to
Mhm.
evacuate for the Eden fire. The fire stopped like literally like 6 blocks north of my mom's house. I mean, um, look, I was a cop in 1993 at the Kinaloa fire, and that
Oh,
was
wow.
just as scary and devastating. It covered the whole mountainside,
Yeah.
destroyed like 128 homes in the Kinaloa Mesa neighborhood, and all the way down to destroyed the old stables, the old nature center.
Right.
So these things happen. I mean, there were some strong winds that night. Did an Edison thing spark and just cause
No.
a fire? And I think it's possible there are sometimes like a confluence of just bad luck stuff.
Yeah.
Why wasn't there enough water? How
Yeah.
come LA fire
That's
didn't
the thing that's kind of weird that it was also in the Palisades and here, and then there's not water, and then it was just
It's
that was
easy for conspiracy
yeah,
theorists to say, oh, this is part of a grand plot to like destroy older communities so they can
yeah,
build, multi-unit housing and mixed use facility.
yeah.
I mean, look, only time will tell. Come back in 20 years, let's look at how it looks, and then we'll know whether there was any truth to the conspiracy theories. That's what I
Like, will
say.
you leave me a note or something that just says like for Marley, like of any good dirt that you don't want to say like while you're alive, and then just have Alyse come pass it to me
Yeah,
and like give me
definitely.
the
Uh,
backstory. Like, hey, by the way, he couldn't say it then, but I think this has been amazing, and I love that it's not like you two are like 90 years old. I mean, that's what to me is cool is that you're young and fun and interested and interesting. And I think it's what gives places like Pasadena, character and kind of depth. I often think like, what I wonder what the Chamber of Commerce would think if I'm running around having a podcast talking all about, this bad stuff that happens. But I mean, to me, I think it makes it just all the more interesting. But what do you think? Do you think your boys in blue are happy that you're doing this or
I've heard from a lot of them. They find it interesting. They listen to the podcast.
yeah,
We got fans there in the police department. Like I'm
yeah,
still close to a lot of these guys. You can't be in an organization like a police department for over 30 years and not still have really close ties.
yeah, yeah,
Still meet some of them for coffee and lunch once in a while.
yeah,
You know, Pasadena PD is a great organization. We do a lot of things. We get a lot right.
yeah,
We make mistakes once in a while. I know we're on
yeah,
the news recently for some troublesome stuff, but
yeah,
overall, I was proud to have been part of that 30 years of my life that I have a lot of fond memories and
yeah.
I was able to do a lot of good stuff in the community and make the city a little better than the place than I found it.
Yeah. Well, we are very grateful for your service. Elise, any final thoughts? As
Uh,
random as they could be.
just look for our book and buy it.
I okay. Hey, listen, I will be happy to. And may I recommend you do a book signing at the Elks Lodge because Nils sold out of all his books. I'm telling you, and these I mean, it was hilarious. I mean, these people are asking questions. I was just like, "Oh my goodness gracious." Yeah, so that's the place. So as soon as it's ready, you let me know and then we'll
Yeah, for
have you
sure.
guys back on. And how can okay, so we know they can find your podcast Little Old Murder in Pasadena wherever people listen to podcasts. And Victor, you mentioned you are Victor Cass
Yeah,
on
Victor
TikTok.
Cass, Victor Cass on TikTok, and Elise has a new TikTok too, Girlosopher. Yeah, so just
Wait, what's
follow
Elise's?
Girlosopher, I don't know, it's just
like
starting. We'll see.
philosopher.
We'll
Yeah,
see
she
how it
just
goes.
Oh,
joined.
nice. I
But,
like that.
we're both on Instagram, X, TikTok. So just you can follow us on those places. Usually
Yeah.
just
We
Victor
have
Cass.
an Instagram set up for the Little Murder from Pasadena, and we
Great.
have a lot of photos on there if you're
Mhm.
interested in
Good.
seeing some of the people we were talking about in our
Yeah.
episodes.
That's terrific. And then of course when the book comes out. Well, I cannot thank you guys enough for going down this rabbit hole with me and I think everybody's going to love it. So, most importantly, you guys, if you have not already subscribed to the channel or liked or commented, please do. Most importantly, share this with a friend
For sure. Yeah.
who would love to just hear some good history or some good dirt, whether they're from Pasadena or not, and we'll make this place more of a cult favorite than it already is. So, Victor and Alyse, thank you. I can't thank you enough for being on. And you guys, I will
It was a pleasure.
thank you. And you can find me on Instagram at the Party Goddess for my day job. And we will see you guys all next week again. Thank you. It's Marley signing off with Victor and Alyse from Every Day's a Train Wreck. Okay. Bye, you guys.